Show. That's right. Welcome in. Welcome back, folks. Very interesting topic here. What does the Florida State loss potentially do to Notre Dame this year? Or what does Notre Dame need to learn from the way Florida State navigated their week one to not end up in the same position as them? 0-1 after week one edition of the Always Irish Show. As always, thanks for being here. Oh, you could feel the energy building, folks. Just got done with the morning show, Monday morning, the live show. Baby, we're popping. The numbers are back. People are back in it. Every old screen names you don't see until the year come, they're all back. The call-in lines are popping. It's just so good to feel college football, Notre Dame energy back. Somebody put a chat and it said, how many hundreds of thousands of content hours has John done and we've all been together talking about this moment coming up and it's finally here. I've really been thinking about that a lot, man. All this, what if this, what if that, what if Notre Dame does this, what if somebody else does that? How's the A&M game going to go? What's Notre Dame going to look like? All of that. We're finally going to get some answers. And not just have these never-ending questions. We need the answers. We're close to getting the answers, and it's going to be great. As always, thanks for being here. You can find the program on YouTube. Do it. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Appreciate it very much. Give the video a thumbs up. That helps Johnny out as well. Notifications on that way you alerted every time a new episode drops. I know you don't want to miss it. Twitter, search bar Always Irish or at Always Irish Inc. Emails alwaysirishnd@gmail.com. Audio only anywhere you want it. You can get it if you don't want to see my face. Nobody going to blame you for that one. The call-in lines. 312-988-15. You dialed up. Tell Uncle Johnny all you've heard and seen. Notre Dame Fighting Irish brought to you by Sports Illustrated. Be there, be square. Whoa, we're popping out the content, baby. Popping out the content. You want it, you got it over there. News, hot takes, thoughts, whatever it is. I put out something on the weather report in College Station. That was doing good numbers last night. We got something for everybody, folks. And also don't forget about patreon.com/Always Irish. It's the former captain. He the leading tackler. It's Mike Goolsby and myself breaking it all down. We have some new things planned this year. Be there, be square. All right. Life comes at you fast, folks. Life comes at you real fast. Here's the deal. Everybody was excited about that Florida State. You got a big brand team kicking off the year kind of in the goofy, the Ireland game, which is cool, by the way. It just doesn't feel the same when Notre Dame's not in it, I guess. The whole Ireland thing that you lose the continuity through line when it's all Ireland, but it's not Notre Dame, whatever. Anyways. Everybody's excited for that moment. Everybody's watching, except for me. 4-year-old's birthday party. I'm watching a bunch of little girls jumping in a bounce house and making sure nobody's drowning in the pool. That was my duty Saturday during this game. So I had to record the game, stay off my phone all during the party and everything during the day and the cleanup and everything. And when it was all over, then I had time to watch the game. And it was interesting. And in my brain the whole time, I was thinking of all these Notre Dame through lines in multiple different aspects related to this game. Let's go over some of them now. Okay. Florida State takes the big, fat, ugly loss to start the year. And what do we learn from this? Number one is good job by Georgia Tech. Really, really good job. They played confidently. They played physically. It seemed like they were a lot more ready to get into the physicality of a college football game and actually hit somebody other than your own team. It just felt to me like they were much more prepared to play a physical football game than Florida State was. Florida State came off to me. They looked like a team that went soft in camp because they didn't want to get anybody hurt. And so they weren't being physical and they weren't taking people to the ground, really hitting a lot. And I feel like that showed. They did not look like a team comfortable giving or receiving hits. Georgia Tech looked like the team, comfortable giving and receiving hits. It's the number one thing I noticed. So, how does this affect Notre Dame? Notre Dame's schedule was already being kind of laughed at. A lot of people don't respect Notre Dame's schedule at all. And they're saying, Notre Dame, I mean, if this isn't the year you're waltzing into the playoffs, when's it going to be? What are we doing here, right? So even before this loss, Notre Dame's schedule was looked at as there ain't much on it. And if you look at it this way, you guys, A&M was ranked, 20th or whatever, but I don't think anybody looks at them elite. Like, it's not like you looked at Ohio State on the schedule last year. That's not how people are looking at A&M on the schedule. It's a different animal. Ranked team, but not expected to be elite. So they're there. Florida State was a big marking point on the schedule. USC at the end of the year, I'm telling you guys, I'm expecting USC to have 3, 4, 5 losses. By the time we get to LA and that play in that dump Coliseum, I'm expecting them to have 3, 4, 5 losses. And so when you play them the last game of the year and they go through this first go around in this Big Ten schedule and their out of conference games is Notre Dame and Brian Kelly and LSU, like, that's a tough schedule. I think they're going to have 3, 4, 5 losses. Okay. So if you're going to have them with a few losses, I'm thinking of, Florida State's already got one and it was an ugly one. I'm not sure what kind of respect level A&M's going to get and what they're going to look like year one. What else do you have on the schedule then? Georgia Tech, if they're better than everybody thinks, and Louisville? Like, this schedule for Notre Dame, you never know how it's going to work out, who's going to end up being good or better than you thought or worse than you thought or whatever. But I don't know what respect level A&M's going to get from people. USC, I expect them to have multiple losses by the time we play them. Florida State's going to have at least one by the time we host them on, it's November 9th, right? I don't know what Louisville's going to be. And then at Georgia Tech, there's not a lot of meat on the bone. Florida State was one of those highlights. People were looking at undefeated matchup in South Bend. Tough way to start the year for them. And maybe for us regarding that strength of schedule, strength of record, how that's going to go. And here's the other part too. Don't forget to check out the merchandise. The link is in the description. You can browse and carouse all the different Always Irish gear. Make sure you head over there and get something for the next tailgate. Thanks for being here. Miami's a part of this. Don't forget, Miami backed out of their game with us. That's how we ended up with Army, I believe. That one extra game that wasn't scheduled on, it was to be announced or whatever. That's how you ended up with that game taking the place of the game that should have been Miami. So don't forget for a second, Miami was supposed to be on this schedule, and that would have changed the dynamic. But they have a lot of talent. Miami should be pretty good this year. So that's an issue too. And that's how you ended up with Army. And I don't think anybody loves the idea of more than one academy in a year. But that's how you ended up in that position. And of course, Army's going to take that game. That's a big game for them to play. So then you could argue when you're like, how is this going to affect Notre Dame's strength of schedule, strength of record, the playoff committee, whatever? You could argue, well, Florida State lost, but we play both teams. So does it really matter if one won or lost? Because if Florida State drops off, but Georgia Tech's, a lot better and rides that all year, doesn't that kind of wash out? I just don't think it's going to have the same effect. Number one is just brand name differences. People think Florida State differently and give them a different level of credibility than you're ever going to give Georgia Tech. That's just the reality of it. The other thing entering my mind is, this is week one. Tech got this big, great physical win, and they handled the moment very well. But I don't know if they're going to be able to ride that all year and not catch a couple losses before Notre Dame plays them. Like, I don't know that I have that confidence just because they beat Florida State. They were more ready to open the year than Florida State was, and they caught them. That's what this was. They were better prepared to do everything you need to do to start your year with a win. Physically, like whatever it is, preparedness for the moment. Tech was way more prepared, and it showed. But I'm not confident they're going to be able to run that week in, week out and be undefeated when we play them, and then it's going to be the moment that the Florida State game was supposed to be. So I don't think it's going to have the same effect. I've seen people be like, all right, Florida State drops, Tech rises, it's a wash. It's not going to be a wash. It's not going to carry the same weight if Georgia Tech, even if they are really good as it does at Florida State, it's just not going to carry the same weight. And again, I don't know this. How is this new committee going to gauge schedules? I have no idea. How is this new expanded committee, which, by the way, I'm predisposed to not trust because they put in charge of the whole committee, Michigan's AD Ward Manuel, in the middle of him covering up all of their scandal. He got promoted to the chair. So right away, I know they have no moral integrity because of that decision. You made a guy covering up an active football scandal the head of the new committee. So I already don't trust you and say you have no moral compass right off the bat. How is this committee going to parse out these schedules? If you win your conference or whatever, that's easy. But I'm talking about, is a 9-3 SEC team or a 9-3 Big Ten team in over a 10-2 Notre Dame? Where does an 11-1 Notre Dame fall? Does it depend on their schedule? Like how good the schedule ends up being? You know the SEC and the Big Ten are going to want as many at-large bids for their 9-3 teams, and they're going to say a 9-3 SEC team is better than a 10-2 Notre Dame team. That argument's going to be presented. In the four-teamer, I felt like the committee talked about strength of schedule and who you're playing all the time, but they talked about it. But when it came down to it, they just went off the loss ledger. That's what I feel like they did. Ran their mouths about who it's against. But then at the final one, it ended up being amount of losses is what they went off of. Is this going to be more of a situation where they're really analyzing how tough your games are and your schedule is 9-3, whatever? Are they going to get serious about breaking down the strength of who you're playing and beating and losing to? There's no data. This is all a big experiment. There's no data. And then once you get a little data, it's going to change because they're going to expand from 12 to 14 anyways. But you, man, when this new playoff thing started, there was a lot of this 10-2 Notre Dame should be in every year, blah, blah, blah. Bro, you're starting to look at these brackets filling out pretty early. Like this 12-teamer starting to fill out already to where it doesn't seem like there's the wiggle room you thought there was going to be. 11-1 Notre Dame safe no matter what. 10-2 Notre Dame, I could see them being left out of the playoff in certain years and circumstances or making the playoff, but you have a brutal round one match where you're going somewhere that's hard to win. That's a bad scenario, man. If Notre Dame's going to have success in this new playoff format, they got to host that round one game in South Bend in the cold, then play a non-Big Ten or SEC team in that second round. That is Notre Dame's path to not just getting in the playoff, but being successful in it. So we don't have the answers to this yet. How is that committee going to analyze, say, a 10-2 Notre Dame versus a 9-3 SEC Big Ten team? I don't know. That's why you need to go 11-1 so you don't find out the hard way, right? 11-1, 12-0. That's what it needs to be for Notre Dame this year. So I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting to see how what this does to them. But Notre Dame strength of schedule and all that, man, it took a big hit. One of your pillars of big game moments just got the legs knocked out from under it. USC is going to have a bunch of losses. And this A&M team, I'm not sure what to expect. You better get this win. You better get this win, or you're relying on what? Louisville and Georgia Tech to buoy up your schedule? I don't know about that. But I do know this. Florida State, they were not ready to start the year, and that needs to be a wake-up for Notre Dame right away. They did not look ready. Slow, unsure, subdued, a step off, not firing on all cylinders, jet-lagged. I mean, they looked like Notre Dame looks in big game road moments all the time. Not ready for the prime time. They had the kind of experience every head coach is afraid of having week one, where you think you're prepared and you learn the hard way, you're not prepared. That it is the kind of moment every head coach is terrified. You think you're ready and you find out in the moment you're not. I would be shocked if I didn't learn they took it easy in camp. They did not look like a team ready for the physicality of a real football game. And I know you don't want to get guys hurt in camp or whatever, but you also got to get guys ready to hit and be hit. They acted like they weren't. So I don't know, man. Notre Dame's just, you got to be careful. With this schedule, you really got to get this one week one and set yourself up, because this schedule is not going to carry you, man. How about this? Some of the tackling, like I'm thinking about tackling and crispness in Notre Dame's game and firing off the ball and all these things Florida State did bad. Did they not hit in camp or what? Like jet lag, flying to Ireland or what? I don't know. Did they take Tech lightly? You can't convince me that's not a part of it. I guarantee you Georgia Tech took Florida State a lot more seriously than Florida State took Tech. And I think it showed, and it was a bad look, and they paid the ultimate price. And Notre Dame's strength of schedule and record is going to pay the ultimate price by trickle-down effect. So I don't know what this is going to do to Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame can only take care of what Notre Dame can take care of, and that is you got to win your football games. And the first one is the most important one. Get this win, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it feels like, no matter how ugly it is. I don't care. Get this win, and you set yourself up for a great year. Florida State laid the roadmap of what not to do. Thinking you're prepared and you're not is a very vulnerable place to be, and that's where Florida State was, and that's where we need to not be. I need to know when Notre Dame runs on the field in College Station. Right away, you need to know they are ready for this moment, ready to play big boy football. Go earn an SEC road win. Can't get enough unfiltered Notre Dame football talk? Be sure to go over to patreon.com/alwaysirish. Former captain Mike Goolsby and myself. Do that. Screw it.
Oh, we never won anything. It's been 30 years.